The oldest pyramid in the world isn't in Egypt, it is in Bosnia, and there's proof. What if I told you one of the world's oldest and largest pyramids might be hiding under a forested hill in Bosnia? Not Egypt, not Mexico, Bosnia. I know it sounds insane, but that's exactly what one man claims to have found. Not a crumbling ruin, not a half-buried foundation, a full-blown pyramid, bigger than Giza, hidden in plain sight, right above a small Balkan town few people had ever heard of, until now. Man, myth and legend. The story begins in 2005, in the quiet town of Vokco. Nothing about this place screams lost civilization. It's peaceful, slow-paced, surrounded by rolling hills, and stitched together with cobblestone roads and red-roofed homes. If anything, it's the kind of place you'd visit to get away from history, not dive into it. But that year, something strange happened. A man named Samir Osmanagic walked into town, and everything changed. Now, Samir isn't your typical archaeologist. In fact, he's not really an archaeologist at all. He's a Bosnian American businessman, born in Yugoslavia, who moved to the US and built a life for himself. But underneath the business suits and boardrooms was a deep obsession with ancient civilizations, especially the ones that didn't quite fit the textbooks. Samir had spent years studying the ruins of Mesoamerica. He'd climbed the pyramids of Teotihuacan, wandered through the temples of Tikal, and buried himself in the mysteries of the Maya. But he wasn't just sightseeing, he was fascinated by the idea that ancient people knew more than we give them credit for. A lot more. So when he came back to Bosnia to visit family in 2005, and found himself standing near a hill called Vokco, and something about it made him stop cold. The hill didn't look right. From the right angle, it had flat, triangular faces, almost like sides. The top was unnaturally flat, not jagged like most peaks in the region, and the slope gradients were nearly even. To Samir, this wasn't just a hill. It looked familiar. It looked designed. It looked like a pyramid. But this was Bosnia. There were no pyramids in Bosnia, right? Well, Samir wasn't so sure. He began measuring the angles of the slopes. They came out astonishingly close to 45 degrees, almost textbook pyramid precision. The orientation aligned nearly perfectly to true north, just like the Great Pyramid of Giza. Coincidence? Maybe. But Samir didn't believe in coincidences, not when it came to ancient structures. He started digging into old maps, historical records and aerial photos. The more he looked, the less the hill seemed natural. It was symmetrical. Too symmetrical. That's when he made the leap. Samir Osmanagic announced that the hill, Vokco, was actually a colossal, man-made pyramid, built by an unknown civilization, thousands of years older than anything we've ever recorded. He called it the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. Locals thought he'd lost it. For generations, that hill had just been a hill. Kids climbed it. Hikers wandered across it. A medieval fortress sat at the top, sure, but nothing older than the 14th century. Nobody had ever imagined anything beneath it. But theories are cheap. Proof is what matters. So in April 2005, Samir started to dig. His small team of volunteers began clearing brush, peeling back topsoil, and removing debris from the base of the hill. And that's when they found it. Flat stone blocks, massive in size, stacked in regular geometric layers. To Samir, it was the smoking gun. These weren't random rocks. They were deliberately placed slabs, like the kind used in ancient construction. Some were clearly cut, others fit together too neatly to be accidental. The team kept digging, and they kept finding more stones, more layers, and even whole sections of hillside that looked less and less like nature, and more like design. Photos of the site started circulating online. Forums lit up. Was this the real deal? Had someone just stumbled across a hidden pyramid in Europe? And despite the proof, not everyone was impressed. Geologists and archaeologists began weighing in, most of them scoffing. They said the stone formations were just natural sedimentary rock, broken over time into flat plates. Bosnia's terrain, after all, is full of geological oddities. Just because something looks like a wall doesn't mean it is one. But others weren't so quick to dismiss it. Volunteers came from across the country and even across the world to help with the dig. Some believed, others were just curious. Because whether you bought into Samir's theory or not, there was something undeniably strange about that hill. The way the stones fit together, the way the ground seemed too uniform, the eerie silence inside freshly unearthed passageways. It all points to something bigger than us. One dig led to another. More formations appeared, block after block, stacking upward like steps. Each new discovery nudged the question forward. Was this just a mountain, or was something buried beneath it on purpose? To Semir, the answer was obvious. He wasn't just uncovering a pyramid, he believed he was rewriting history. But even he didn't realise what was coming next, because this discovery was just the tip of something much bigger. Anatomy of a pyramid. So maybe you're still sceptical. Maybe Vysocika Hill's just a weird-looking mountain with a few oddly shaped rocks. But what if I told you it doesn't stop there? That hill isn't just a pyramid. It's part of an entire pyramid complex, 5 structures, spread across the Vokco Valley, all shaped like pyramids, all bearing ancient names. The Pyramid of the Sun, the Moon, the Earth, the Dragon, and the Pyramid of Love. And it sounds like something pulled from a myth or a fantasy novel, but this isn't fiction. And right at the centre of it all, the one that started everything, is the Pyramid of the Sun. You might remember it by its other name, Vysocika Hill. It towers over Vosoko, rising 720 metres above sea level. That's taller than the Great Pyramid of Giza by a full 100 metres. But height isn't the most interesting part, it's the shape. From multiple angles, the hill appears to have 4 triangular faces, each sloping with sharp, clean lines that seem too symmetrical to be natural. The summit is flat, not jagged. The slopes aren't random or wild, they're even, intentional. Still, a weird shape doesn't make it a pyramid, unless it's aligned. North, perfect north. Osmanagic's team measured the hill's orientation. The north-facing side aligns to true north, with an accuracy of less than 0.2 degrees. For context, the Great Pyramid of Giza, often celebrated for its precision, deviates by 0.067 degrees. And this one is not that far off, and it's not just one side. The other faces of the hill point toward east, south and west, forming what appears to be a nearly perfect cardinal alignment. Now, here's the thing. Mountains don't align themselves with the compass. They just grow, form, crumble. They don't care where the north is. So when something this big, this perfectly shaped, lines up with the cardinal directions, people start to wonder, was it designed that way? Or is it all just nature messing with us? That's the question Osmanagic couldn't stop asking. So his team dug deeper, and what they found under the surface would challenge everything. The deeper the excavations went, the stranger it got. Beneath layers of soil and vegetation, workers uncovered slabs of what appeared to be concrete. Not modern concrete, but a kind of ancient, artificial stone, layered in horizontal strata like bricks. Samples were taken. Some labs called it geopolymer concrete, a type of man-made material made from crushed stone and binding agents, not unlike what modern engineers use today. According to tests, the material was stronger and more durable than most commercial concrete on the market. Independent analysis done by European materials labs revealed compressive strength between 73 and 134 megapascals. For comparison, typical modern concrete ranges from 20 to 40. That means this thing is 3 times stronger than what we use in skyscrapers today. If that's true, and these blocks were indeed moulded, poured and set, then someone had the ability to engineer advanced construction materials nearly 30,000 years ago. Someone thousands of years ago built a structure the size of a skyscraper using industrial-grade materials, at a time when the official story says Bosnia was inhabited by Neolithic farmers with no knowledge of metal tools, much less advanced engineering. And just when you think this story's peaked, there is something under the pyramids. Northwest of the pyramid is a network of passageways known as the Raven Tunnels. These aren't natural caves or mine shafts, but part of an underground labyrinth that stretches beneath the valley and connects not just 1 or 2, but all 5 pyramids in the complex. Osmanagic's team began clearing the tunnels out in the mid-2000s, and according to volunteers, they uncovered strange dry walls, chambers, and massive megalithic stones covered in symbols no one could decipher. The tunnels twist and turn with unexpected precision. Some are too narrow for mining equipment. Others seem to go nowhere, while a few branch off into deeper, unexplored chambers. Osmanagic believes they were deliberately blocked thousands of years ago with loose fill. perhaps to protect whatever lies further inside. For Samir Osmanagic, this isn't just geology, this is the circulatory system of a forgotten pyramid complex, one that predates every known civilization by thousands of years. When Osmanagic's team first entered the Raven tunnels in the early 2000s, they didn't walk into neatly preserved chambers. What they found was a chaotic mess. Most of the tunnels were packed with dense, clay-like fill, not collapsed, not eroded, deliberately filled in, as if someone long ago had gone out of their way to block every single corridor. So they started digging. By hand. Volunteers from over 60 countries showed up. Some were professional archaeologists, most weren't. But what they uncovered wasn't random rubble. They found a maze. Passageways curved and connected at precise angles, sometimes forming intersections that mirrored the pyramid's external geometry. Dry stone walls appeared deep in the maze, built without mortar, yet still standing. The deeper they went, the more intricate it became, and then they found something massive. The K2 megalith. Roughly 300 meters into the tunnel system, buried in the clay, they hit something hard and flat. What emerged was a massive flat-faced stone slab, roughly 25 tons in weight, and positioned like a sealed doorway. Osmanagic dubbed it the K2 megalith. It wasn't just big, it was carved. On its surface were inscriptions. Some said they resembled ancient runes. Others compared them to astronomical charts, alignments of stars, planetary movements, even solar eclipses. Osmanagic claimed it could be a kind of calendar stone, meant to track celestial events thousands of years ago. Of course, critics were quick to push back. They argued the symbols were nothing more than natural cracks and erosion marks, that the shape wasn't intentional. But the stone didn't look like the surrounding bedrock. It seemed placed or left behind depending on how you look. Why? No one could say. But it wasn't the only anomaly down there. In some of the upper chambers, researchers found stalactites, long, mineral-rich spikes hanging from the ceiling. That alone isn't unusual. But what caught their attention was the water erosion around them. Stalactites form slowly, centimetre by centimetre, over thousands of years. Based on their growth and the watermarks around them, these were dated at over 10,000 years old. Which raises a major question. If the tunnels were filled with water and forming stalactites 10,000 years ago, then they had to have been carved before that, not by medieval miners, but by someone else, someone ancient, someone unknown. And that's when the tunnel's energy started making headlines. You see, inside the tunnels, strange things happen. Osmanagic claims the Ravne tunnels are alive with energy. He had different independent engineers measure electromagnetic fields, ultrasound emissions, and high levels of negative ions, all coming from the tunnels or the apex of the Pyramid of the Sun, and it all brought outstanding results. After the initial excitement around the pyramid's shape and alignment, the story started to shift. People weren't just looking at this as an archaeological site anymore, they were calling it something else. A power centre, a healing zone, a place where energy, real, measurable energy, was flowing in ways that modern science can't fully explain. At the centre of it all was a group of independent researchers, volunteers, and open-minded scientists. They came from all over the world: Egypt, Russia, the UK, Japan. Most had never heard of Vokco before 2005, but when they saw the photos, the angles, the claims, they packed their gear and flew out. What they found only made things weirder. Enter Dr. Harry Oldfield, a British physicist and researcher best known for his work on bioenergetic fields, what some call auras. He developed a special kind of imaging system, based on polycontrast interference photography, that he claimed could visualize energy fields the human eye can't see. In 2008, Dr. Oldfield visited the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun and pointed his equipment toward the top. What his device allegedly captured were concentric rings of energy spiraling above the pyramid, something he'd never seen before, not even in Egypt. This wasn't just static interference or magnetic noise, this was organized, pulsing, and consistent like a living system. He described it as a beam of energy rising vertically from the apex, forming a kind of vortex or column. He wasn't the only one who saw it. Other researchers using electromagnetic sensors began picking up strange readings, especially at the top of the pyramid. A group of physicists from Serbia and Croatia came in with more traditional equipment. frequency analyzers, magnetometers, and oscilloscopes, and they claimed they were detecting a focused beam of electromagnetic energy rising directly from the pyramid's apex. Its frequency was 28 kilohertz, and it wasn't a random noise, it was a steady signal, as if being broadcast or amplified by the pyramid itself. And get this, it wasn't coming from any external power source. No wires, no machinery, just the structure. Weirdly enough, the signal intensified as it moved upward, suggesting a type of non-Hertzian wave behaviour, something mainstream physics has no easy explanation for. It's deeply strange because beams don't usually gain strength as they ascend. They decay. That's basic physics. But this one pulses stronger the further up you go. Semir Osmanagic, of course, was thrilled. To him, this was proof that the pyramid wasn't just symbolic, it was functional, and possibly still active. That's when Osmanagic brought in the big guns. Not scientists, but ideas. He started connecting these anomalies to the work of Nikola Tesla, the Serbian-American inventor who dreamed of wireless energy transmission. Tesla believed the Earth itself could conduct power through resonance, vibrating energy through the ground and into the air. Osmanagic suggested the pyramid was doing exactly that, acting like a resonator, tapping into zero-point energy, what some call the cosmic background field, theoretical, limitless, and untouched by modern engineering. He went further. He claimed the pyramid was emitting Tesla scalar waves, a form of longitudinal energy that doesn't weaken over distance. Scalar waves, if they exist, could pass through solid matter without resistance. They're silent, undetectable by most instruments, but they carry massive potential. Power, healing, communication. According to Osmanagic, the pyramid wasn't just an ancient tomb, it was a machine, an energy amplifier, a relic from a forgotten civilization that understood frequencies better than we do now. According to Osmanagic, some rooms inside the Raven system aren't just chambers, they're designed spaces, built to amplify and channel energy in specific ways. He calls them healing chambers. It sounds like science fiction, but the testimonials were adding up. People who entered the Raven tunnels started saying strange things. Chronic pain, gone, arthritis, eased, migraines, disappeared. Some visitors reported a warm sensation in their chest. Others said they felt lighter, more energized, even euphoric. There were claims of improved blood circulation, normalized blood pressure, and a sense of mental clarity. Even Novak Djokovic, the world-famous tennis star, visited the pyramids twice, hailing them as paradise on earth. To skeptics, this sounded like spiritual tourism at best, a placebo at worst. But Osmanagic pointed back to the data. Sensors placed in these rooms recorded high oxygen levels, minimal electromagnetic pollution, and virtually no harmful microbes. Negative ion counts, typically found near waterfalls or high-altitude forests, were off the charts. Negative ions, in scientific studies, have been linked to improved mood, better oxygen intake, and faster healing. The buzz grew. Thousands of people visited the site. Not just believers, but energy healers, meditation groups, yoga instructors, and even former skeptics. Something was happening in Vokco. Whether it was spiritual, electrical, or psychological, people kept coming back. The world's reaction. From the moment Semir Osmanagic declared a sleepy hill in Bosnia to be the oldest pyramid on Earth, the world responded in exactly the way you'd expect. Some laughed, some listened, and some got very, very angry. Because this wasn't just a claim about rocks, this was a direct hit to the story of human civilization. A story carefully written, edited, and defended by archaeologists, historians, and institutions with reputations to protect. And now this guy, this Texas-based Bosnian-American businessman with a PhD in something called sociology of history, was saying the Giza pyramids weren't the first, that Egypt wasn't the cradle, that we'd been wrong all along. To mainstream academia, it was pure heresy, and they didn't waste time hiding it. Within months of Osmanagic's first excavation, in 2005, a chorus of archaeologists across Europe and the US came together to do what the scientific world does best when faced with controversy: circle the wagons. In a statement that went viral across academic circles, the European Association of archaeologists, EAA, called the Bosnian Pyramid Project, quote, a cruel hoax. Not a mistake. Not an overreach. A hoax. They claimed Osmanagic was misleading the public, desecrating legitimate prehistoric sites, and exploiting Bosnia's heritage for fame and tourism cash. They dismissed the stone blocks as natural formations. The Ravne tunnels, medieval mining shafts, the energy beams? Nonsense. Even Bosnia's own national museum in Sarajevo got involved. Several staff members, including leading archaeologists, spoke out publicly. They accused Osmanagic of damaging real, valuable historical layers like Neolithic settlements and medieval artefacts buried in the same area, just to chase a fantasy. But outside the ivory towers, the story was very different. Because while scientists condemned the project, something else was happening on the ground in Vokco. People were coming, lots of them. And Osmanagic didn't just allow them in, he encouraged it. He opened the excavation site to anyone willing to help, turning the Bosnian pyramids into one of the most democratized archaeological digs in the world. No credentials needed, just curiosity. He held international conferences, gave TED-style talks, hosted healing retreats in the Ravne tunnels. And every summer, the dig became a kind of spiritual summer camp. Shovels, trowels, yoga mats and Geiger counters all side by side. Critics called it a cult. Supporters called it a revolution. Caught in the middle of all this was the Bosnian government. On one hand, the scientific community was begging them to shut the project down. On the other hand, the pyramids were doing something Bosnia hadn't seen in decades. Tourism, money, headlines, hope. After a brutal war in the 1990s, Bosnia was struggling. Infrastructure was shattered. Youth were fleeing the country. The national identity was fractured. And suddenly one man shows up and says, hey, maybe your country is the birthplace of civilization. That's not just a theory, that's a national rebranding. Hotels in Vokco filled up, restaurants reopened, souvenir stands appeared, property values climbed. Local guides started giving tours in 5 languages, so the government played both sides. They never officially endorsed the pyramids, but they didn't shut them down either. They gave Osmanagic the permits he needed and kept an arm's length distance, just close enough to benefit and far enough to avoid academic fallout. It was the ultimate gamble, economic revival or international embarrassment. And for Osmanagic, it didn't matter. He wasn't backing down. To every accusation, he gave the same calm reply. They laughed at Galileo too. He stood in front of cameras and said that mainstream archaeology had become a religion, defending its own dogma, refusing to accept new data, afraid of being wrong. He pointed out that pyramids exist on every continent: China, Mexico, Egypt, Indonesia, and now Bosnia, and that perhaps we should be asking why. He waved charts of energy fields, cited independent studies, showed photos of stone blocks, 90-degree angles, and ancient mortar. And when the ridicule got louder, he got bolder. He began to say that the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun wasn't just older than Egypt, it was 33,000 years old. That it was built by a civilization not yet recognized, one that mastered energy, geometry, and maybe even healing. And the scientists, they kept yelling from the sidelines. But instead of people to listen to the scientists, they listened to Osmanagic. Documentaries about the pyramids hit millions of views on YouTube. Influencers posted selfies from inside the tunnels. And slowly, the public perception began to shift. What if this wasn't a hoax? What if this man, dismissed and mocked by every major archaeologist, was simply asking a question no one wanted to hear? What if we're wrong about history? That's not a conspiracy theory. It's the heart of what makes the Bosnian pyramid so dangerous. Because if Semir Osmanagic is right, then we're not looking at just another archaeological debate. We're staring down a complete rewrite of human history. It starts with a number, 33,000 years. That's how old Osmanagic says the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is, based on radiocarbon dating of organic material found between the stone layers during excavation. Not 5,000 years old, not 10,000. That's 20,000 years older than the pyramids of Giza. It predates Stonehenge, the Sumerians, and the wheel. It predates agriculture, metallurgy, cities, everything mainstream history says makes us civilized. If he's right, then some advanced culture, was building monumental stone structures, while the rest of the planet was supposedly still living in caves. And that's just the beginning. Because Osmanagic isn't just talking about dates, he's talking about a lost civilization, a global one. Because this is a pattern nobody talks about. Why do so many pyramids exist around the world? Not just in Egypt and Mesoamerica, but in China, Sudan, Indonesia, Peru, and now apparently Bosnia. They're built from different materials in different climates, with different cultural styles, and yet they all follow the same core architectural blueprint. Massive triangular structures, aligned to celestial events, often built with impossible precision and containing unknown energy properties. Mainstream archaeology insists these were all developed independently, coincidences of form, cultural echoes. But Osmanagic asks a different question. What if they weren't? What if these aren't coincidences at all, but clues, breadcrumbs left by a civilization that once spanned the globe? One who understood energy, astronomy, geometry, and consciousness in ways we're only beginning to rediscover. And more importantly, what if the pyramids weren't monuments to the dead, but machines built by the living? Here's where it gets even weirder. The Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions, north, south, east and west, with an accuracy that rivals the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its three main sides also form isosceles triangles, meaning they're mathematically equal in height, slope and base, suggesting intentional geometric planning. Even the positioning of the nearby Pyramid of the Moon and Pyramid of the Dragon forms a perfect equilateral triangle when mapped from above. That's not random, that's sacred geometry, a design language found across ancient monuments from Teotihuacan to Angkor Wat, a pattern that repeats itself in spiritual sites, star charts and even human DNA. And what's at the heart of sacred geometry? Energy. Not just spiritual energy, but physical, measurable forces. Sound, vibration, electromagnetism, and telluric currents. So the next question becomes, were these pyramids tools? If so, what were they doing? Osmanagic believes these pyramids were never tombs. He says there's no evidence of burial chambers, no hieroglyphics, no royal mummies. Instead, he suggests they were technological structures, built to interact with the Earth's natural energy fields. Sound crazy? Maybe. But here's the twist. Many ancient cultures believed the same thing. The Egyptians used harmonic chambers inside the Great Pyramid. The Mayans built structures that amplified sound. The Chinese used resonant stones for ritual healing. None of them called these places tombs, they called them gateways. To what? That's where the mystery deepens. Because if the Bosnian pyramids were really energy machines, designed not to bury kings, but to elevate human potential, then we're not just misdating history, we're misunderstanding it completely. There's a theory gaining traction in fringe science and forbidden archaeology circles. It goes like this: humans didn't slowly crawl out of the Stone Age, learning to farm, then build, then write. Instead, there were waves of civilization, rises and collapses, triggered by natural cataclysms, wars or solar cycles. And in each wave, some knowledge survived, some was lost and some were buried. The Bosnian pyramids, if real, would be a fossil of forgotten greatness, not a step forward, but a step back toward what we once knew. And if that's true, then history isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. Which means the question isn't, how did they build this back then? It is, what have we forgotten today? So do all these make sense? Let's be frank. Do they? Well, to most critics, which is made up of archaeologists, scientists, and every logical person, they say no. And their argument is simple. This isn't a mystery, it's a mistake. Natural hills, not hidden pyramids. Let's start with the shape. To the untrained eye, the Pyramid of the Sun looks too perfect to be natural. Its triangular faces, sharp slopes, and near symmetry seem man-made. But to geologists, that kind of formation is nothing special. They point to a basic principle in geomorphology: erosion-prone terrain, especially in regions with tectonic activity and layered rock, often forms pyramid-like shapes. Hills with steep flanks and flat faces are common across the Dinaric Alps. According to Professor Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, known for his own controversial Sphinx weathering theory, the so-called Bosnian pyramid is simply a hill. It's formed by sedimentary layers that fractured and broke along natural lines. There's nothing unusual about it. So while Semir Osmanagic saw the geometry of ancient engineering, geologists saw slightly pointy dirt. Then there's the so-called ancient concrete, the cornerstone of Osmanagic's claim. He says the slabs discovered under the soil were engineered by advanced builders using geopolymer technology. But geologists and several independent materials labs disagree. Multiple analyses of the blocks revealed they are composed of conglomerate, a naturally occurring mix of gravel, clay, sand and limestone. Over time, these materials naturally compress into rock formations called breccia, or sandstone. In other words, these slabs weren't poured, they were pressured. What about the unusually high compressive strength Osmanagic loves to cite? Critics argue that those figures come from selective samples. Stronger layers, mixed with calcite and iron oxide, can register unusually high readings in lab tests, but that doesn't make them man-made. So what looks like ancient engineering to one group looks like millennia of mud under pressure to another. But this debate isn't just theoretical. According to Bosnia's own National Museum and the European Association of Archaeologists, Osmanagic's excavations have caused real-world damage to the region's actual, verifiable heritage. Vokco sits on land rich in medieval and Roman artefacts. Nearby structures include Illyrian burial mounds, Byzantine ruins, and Ottoman-era sites, all confirmed by decades of historical research. But what about the Ravne tunnels? Supporters say the winding network of underground passages is proof of ancient intelligence. But skeptics argue something more mundane. They're modern. There are no ancient tools, no inscriptions, no carvings, no consistent cultural layer. In fact, much of the tunnel material seems freshly excavated, with modern wheelbarrow tracks still visible in places. Some critics claim volunteers and workers have been carving and reshaping the tunnels themselves, guided by Osmanagic's team. According to British archaeologist Anthony Harding, president of the European Association of Archaeologists, it's hard to see what these tunnels are except a recent fabrication. In other words, they're not a time capsule, they're a construction project. Then we get to the buzzword of the decade, energy. Supporters claim the pyramids emit strange frequencies, ultrasound waves, electromagnetic pulses and scalar fields. Visitors say they can feel it in their bones. Some even suggest these forces have healing powers. But scientists argue that these readings could easily come from radio frequency interference, mobile towers, underground cables, or even miscalibrated equipment. Dr. Paul Heinrichs, a geologist who's reviewed the data, said the tests don't follow standard geophysical protocol. There's no control group, no baseline readings, and most of it is anecdotal. Even the famous 28 kHz sound recorded at the pyramid's apex? It could be from machinery, seismic noise, or RF bleed, not some mystical pulse from the earth. And since none of the readings have been replicated under peer-reviewed conditions, mainstream physicists are skeptical. If there's energy here, it hasn't passed the scientific smell test. And that brings us to the most cynical criticism of all. What if the Bosnian pyramids aren't a mistake, but a marketing plan? Some critics say the entire project is a tourism-driven spectacle, an easy sell in a country recovering from war, with a struggling economy and a hunger for global relevance. And it's working. Since Osmanagic began his campaign, Vokco has seen a massive spike in tourism. Hotels have sprung up. Gift shops sell pyramid-themed merchandise. Cafes, hostels and energy spas now dot the town centre. Supporters say this has breathed new life into the region. But skeptics argue it's done so by selling fantasy over fact. They point to Osmanagic's books, seminars, retreats and online following, suggesting he's created a spiritual, industrial complex, where mystery means money and believers pay to dig. And while Osmanagic has never been caught in a lie, or proven to have falsified data, that hasn't stopped the whispers. If this is a hoax, it's a profitable one, and that's why it's difficult to know if this is a hoax or just a part of science we haven't understood yet. Because here's the strange part, most hoaxes don't last this long. We've seen pyramid-shaped theories crumble before. Remember the infamous Japanese underwater pyramid of Yonaguni? In the 90s, a scuba diving professor claimed to find man-made ruins beneath the sea, off the coast of Japan. For a brief moment, it was hailed as Atlantis reborn, until marine geologists examined the site and said, nope, just natural erosion. It faded, the headlines stopped. The divers moved on. Same with the Nebra sky disk, once called the world's oldest star map. At first it blew up the archeological world, then it was dismissed as a modern forgery, until new studies flipped the script again. Now it's in a museum, so why hasn't the Bosnian pyramid collapsed under similar pressure? Why is it still here, pulling in scientists, tourists, skeptics and spiritual seekers after almost 2 decades? One possibility, people want to believe. Another, maybe, just maybe, we were too quick to dismiss it. Because history has a habit of humbling us. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza. For over a century, Western archaeologists told us it was just a royal tomb, a monument to a dead pharaoh, nothing more. But recently, that story's getting murky. In 2017, scientists using muon tomography, a kind of cosmic ray scanning, discovered a hidden void inside the Great Pyramid, a chamber at least 30 meters long. No one knew it was there, no one can explain its purpose. Even stranger, researchers studying electromagnetic anomalies found that the Great Pyramid concentrates electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers and at the base. Not pseudoscience, this was published in a peer-reviewed physics journal. So suddenly the pyramid isn't just a tomb, it might also be a machine, or a conductor, or something we still don't understand. For centuries, those who suggested pyramids were energy devices were mocked, laughed out of lecture halls, labelled fringe theorists. Which brings us back to Vokco. Maybe Semiros Monagic is wrong. Maybe he's just very good at branding. Or maybe, like with Giza, we just don't have the tools yet to see what's really beneath the surface. Because despite all the criticism, despite the condemnation, despite being laughed out of academia, the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is still there.